British student who was injured when a suicide bomber blew himself up on a bus in Israel has died.
I think everybody felt it was their loss. He was a Scottish boy, and that it didn't matter that he was a Jewish boy. For once there was some positive angle, some hope for the future.
A phone call from a reporter and saying, and how do you feel about the fact that your son and brother's kidney has been given to a Palestinian girl? Well, we knew nothing about this. I've often visualised Yoni full of the joys of life, running to the bus. Part of me feels that his feet took him to the place where he was going to die.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Talk with the Scot. For anyone that saw my LinkedIn post last week, this is a very special and personal episode, and I'm delighted to be sitting across from somebody I've known for a good number of years, Marsha Gladstone. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's very special to be here.
It is, and it's extra special it's a busy day in the family, to be honest.
Yep.
Because it's the Hebrew anniversary of Yoni being killed.
Yeah.
It's also the Hebrew anniversary of my mum dying. It's your birthday and it's my daughter's birthday.
Of course.
It's a busy day.
It is a busy day.
It is a busy day.
It's a very special day.
It is.
And it's amazing how things turn out.
And it's amazing we can sit here and still smile. I mean, there's a lot to get through, and I've been thinking a lot about how to approach this and how to do this, because it is a really personal and in some level, or lots of levels, a very tragic event. It was a very painful event for everybody, none more so than yourself. And we'll get to that. But I think for people that are listening, it probably makes sense if we go back a little bit and try and make some connections. You obviously grew up in Glasgow.
Yeah.
You are one of four in terms of siblings. Grew up, if I remember correct, your mum's originally from Canada. Your dad's from Scotland.
That's right, yeah.
He was a very successful businessman.
Yeah. And
you met your first husband, Joseph, I think when you were quite young.
Yeah, I was 19.
19, wow.
Very young. From where I'm sitting now, it's very young.
Very young. Well,
but we're not going to tell anybody where I'm sitting now.
I won't. You know, 21 today, it's okay. You got married, and after a short period of time, you moved to Israel with Joseph, with 4 children.
Yes.
And then a few years later, you moved back with the children, divorced, didn't work out. If I remember correctly, not long after that, you met my dad outside of the primary school.
Yes.
Where Yoni and Jared both went, and my sister Heidi went.
And Ari as well.
He was there as well.
Because we just come back from Israel and his English wasn't great, so he had to repeat the last year of primary.
Okay.
You can remind him about that.
I will remind him. I was talking to him this morning, actually. So you met my dad, because my mum had died like maybe 2 years just before.
2.5 years or something like that.
Okay. And a few years after that, you and my dad married. I was 16 at the time.
Is that
16,
right?
16 and a half.
Yeah.
Fast forward a couple of years, my sister Yael was born. Hello, Yael. You'll love me for mentioning her in this. And at that point, Yoni was 8 or 9.
Yes.
Yeah.
6 and 8 or 9. That's right, because he was 6 when we got together, 6.5. Yeah.
And without going into too much detail, the house was a bit crazy. Lots of kids, and everybody was at their sort of own stage of life. Like Darren, my older brother, had already left. I was on the verge of leaving the house, and people were, studying for exams, and then obviously all the way down to Yoni, who was 8, 9. He was just a typical 8, 9-year-old, messing about, playing around, wanting to do judo,
annoying everybody.
Yeah, just the typical 8, 9-year-old boy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Gosh, I remember he and Jared, that's the next one up, his older brother, they used to have these fun fights, and you and Darren used to say, "What is wrong with these? What?" Because they were young and being naughty, and then one would hit the other, and then one would cry, and they'd come running to me, and you and Darren oh my gosh.
It wasn't the fighting, I think it was the noise.
And, then,
We could beat each other up, who cares? It was just the noise that went with it.
and I didn't even notice.
Yeah.
So funny.
But then basically, 19th of September 2002, what was just a fairly simple life. You were a teacher, got up for work every day. You know, the biggest issues were who took the rubbish out and who emptied the dishwasher. Just your typical issues that every household has to deal with. On the 19th of September 2002, it all changed.
Absolutely.
Could you, in talking of a simple life, you were in the supermarket
That's right.
and you got a phone call.
I had spent the morning in school, and I'd left school with a long list of I was going to do shopping for the Sukkot holiday. I did a massive shopping, and my shopping trolley was full. And as I was there in the supermarket, I got a phone call from Ari, and Ari had heard that Yoni had been seriously injured, but didn't tell me that. He said he heard that there was a bus bombing in Tel Aviv, and that Yoni and his cousin Gideon, they were together on their way to join their uncle for the Sukkot holiday. They were both on the bus together, and he heard that they were involved in this. And that was all they told me at that point, and I just dropped everything and ran out of the supermarket and got home. We looked on the news. Your dad was there. I phoned him on the way. He already had the news on. And when we were looking at the news, Ari had told me which hospital they were taken to. And on the news they said the more seriously injured have been taken to Ichalov Hospital. And then another penny dropped because they didn't want to tell me all at once. We realised that this was really a serious business. Yep. So ridiculously, we had just sent our passports away like a couple of days before to be renewed because we weren't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so that started a whole chain of events, running into Glasgow to get emergency passports, somebody picking Yael up from the bus stop. She was 9 at the time, and she was so excited because she was going to be getting goldfish that day, and her friend was coming with her. So, so many things to deal with on so many levels, and friends coming over and helping me pack because I couldn't get my head together, and it was all so unreal, and telling everybody, going to tell my mum, and everybody getting ready to go to Israel. All of us who were in Glasgow, my daughter who was in New York, you lot were in London at the time.
Yep.
None of you were in Israel, of course. And we all met in Heathrow at the airport on the way, and then we travelled on to Israel. And actually, UGIA gave us our private room in the airport. Were you there at that point?
So
Did
I
you
wasn't.
travel with us?
No. Darren, myself, and Heidi,
You came
we flew a little bit later.
in the day.
Yeah.
You were at the funeral?
We didn't make it to the
Right.
funeral.
It's
We came
funny,
a
I
little
don't
bit
remember
after.
these details.
Well, that's the thing, because we were obviously over the last few days exchanging messages, and there are things that I was highlighting or saying to you, do you remember this, do you remember that? And you don't, and we'll get to those as well. But
Yeah. Some things I remember so clearly, and some things I just don't remember at all.
yeah, which makes sense, because
Yeah.
there was a lot to process round about that time. Because you're right, I was living in London at that point, and I was in the office, and I got a phone call from my sister saying a bus has been blown up in Tel Aviv. And my reaction obviously was, oh, it's a nightmare. And then she said, Yoni was on the bus. And I remember the words hadn't even come out of her mouth properly, and I was packing up, and
Really, really.
we'd arranged to meet at her flat. And as I was leaving the office, I was phoning my boss saying, you need to come here. There's been a terrible incident. You need to come here. And he said, what incident? And I said to him, and for anybody else, it's like, what are you talking about? Because it's so ridiculous. The concept is so
It's
ridiculous.
like something that happens to other people on the other side of the world.
Yeah, or you watching television.
Yeah, exactly.
And I drove down, and that was the bit where we met at my sister Heidi's house. And we're sitting there, my brother, myself and Heidi, and we're watching the news, and we can see the injured being brought into the hospital.
And did you actually see, because I
we
saw in the
saw.
news clip later, Yoni being brought in a stretcher,
saw.
and you see him.
Yeah,
Did you realise that was him at that moment?
we saw that. there. And this is obviously 2002, so it's before, internet's really been established, and it's definitely before you can pause live TV and freeze. But we could see him being wheeled in. I messaged you yesterday and I said to you, do you remember the media and the police being outside the house in Glasgow? And you said, I don't remember that. And it was because I remember speaking to Dad, and he was saying we've had to phone the police because the media are congregating outside and we're loading the car, and every time we come out, they're there.
Now that you're saying it, it sort of comes back to me a little bit. But that, I was so busy trying to get my head together, trying to pack up and to get ready to go. Gosh. And I remember in London, UGIA meeting us and being so helpful and giving us phones, mobile phones. We would have them when we were there. I remember being on the plane and just getting past very quickly. It was an overnight flight. I'd been at work at 1 o'clock, and here we were 10 o'clock at night on a flight to Israel and not knowing what we were going to face. And I just remember holding my middle section the whole time and just thinking, oh my gosh, what is this going to be? We just didn't know.
Because that was one thing I was going to ask you about the flight.
Because I hadn't seen that clip of Yoni coming into the hospital. I didn't see that till later.
Okay.
And I didn't know what we were going to face.
And it's probably just as well you didn't see the clip. I mean, you've seen it since.
Yeah, but I mean, I didn't know what state he would be in, if he would be all in one piece, or what had happened.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It might have helped me if I'd seen that he was just lying down and he was just like a normal person, all in one piece, because I was really worried about what we would find. And then we were met right at the plane by the ambassador to the British ambassador to Israel, Sherard Cooper Coles, who we're still in touch with to this day. A wonderful man. We all got into his big limousine car and went straight to the hospital. And immediately were taken upstairs. And I remember thinking, this is all very quick, very quick. We're just going to be seeing Yoni, and I was really scared. I didn't really want to know. I didn't want to see. I just would love to have had all this stop. But, we were there and really he was in one piece, and he was as if he was just sleeping. But actually, as we were told, what had happened was that he was attached to a life support machine and he wasn't really alive anymore. Yes, so he had a bullet had lodged in the base of his brain, in the brain stem, and Gideon said from that second he just slumped down on the floor. I think his eyes rolled up, sort of, and he was unconscious from that moment. So at least we knew he was in one piece and he'd been unconscious immediately. So that was a bit, soothing. And
they probably kept him on that machine
till we got there.
Yeah.
Exactly. Which was wonderful. I can't even begin to imagine if that hadn't have happened. So we had the opportunity to sit around his bed and to hold his hand and to say some Tehillim and to just talk to him, really, and gave us a little bit of time to begin to come to terms with what was happening. Because it was so unreal.
Yeah.
It's just, life is so strange and it throws these things at you, but everybody says this, things are unreal at the moment, and it's very hard for your emotions to catch up. Sometimes they do, and it's right on the moment, and you can burst into tears and be so upset, but more often than not, it just doesn't. They don't match up at that moment.
Well, it's funny you say that, because obviously a few of us came in a few hours later that day, and I remember obviously we were staying in the Ramada Hotel in Jerusalem, and they'd given us sort of half a floor, and they'd cornered us off. And I remember when we got there, I said to Dad, how's Marsha? Because I hadn't seen you yet.
Mm.
And he said, when she's with everybody, the face is okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when the door's closed...
I was just crying all the time.
Yeah.
I remember sitting in the shul downstairs because it was Sukkot, and just crying the whole time and thinking, I wonder what everybody, what if they think this woman is sitting here crying non-stop. And yet, which was a good thing.
Yeah.
Because, if you can't cry then, when can you cry? But so often, like this morning at the cemetery at the Eskara for Yoni, I'm going through it, and it's very special and it's very meaningful that I normally wouldn't be so highly emotional. But sometimes if somebody just says something that catches me, or often when I'm speaking about Yoni and somebody asks me a question, I can just suddenly have to take a deep breath and compose myself.
Yeah.
I suddenly remember something, and so it catches me.
Yeah.
So often not exactly when it should.
You landed this morning. You're going to be in Israel for sort of 10 days. And as is the norm, you went straight to the cemetery.
Well, I did have a bit of a night's sleep at Heidi's.
Ah, okay, fine.
Yeah, my darling stepdaughter, your sister.
Yes. So you went to the cemetery.
Yeah.
And so Yoni's buried in Jerusalem.
Yes.
And Yoni's there, and there's a space. And then my dad is there.
Yeah.
And the space is for you.
That's right.
And we always have a laugh in our family that, "Oh, don't stand there, you're stepping in Marsha."
That's so funny.
But
That's so funny.
I think, and this is going to sound very weird to people that are listening, but I think when it comes to such painful emotions and experiences and stories, I think you've got to add a little bit of humour somehow. So we're definitely not going to make jokes about Yoni and the attack.
Yeah.
You're next.
Yes, yeah. You have to. It's our way, and it's funny because it's on both sides of the family, the Jesner side and the Gladstone side.
Yeah.
That we're not wailing and wailing about this, but we all feel it, but you can take it lightly or make light of it, or we connect sometimes just through humour.
Yeah.
And we often do in London as well. Somebody will come up with something just ridiculous, quite dark humour, and somehow that's a fun way to connect. It's a lively way. It's more about life.
Yeah.
And it's more about the living and about being positive. And if it's one thing that I have learned from losing Yoni, so young and so many years ago in my life, is that you have to live, and you're living for each other and for the family. And if you collapse and you're miserable all the time, it brings everybody down around you. And that's like perpetuating the whole tragic feeling. Whereas if you can be positive and be in each day as it comes, then you can use the tragedy, and it can bring us all together sometime because we've all experienced this, and it's something we have in common and we've been through, but you can have a more positive outlook. And I like to think that when people remember Yoni, like Gideon, who spoke at the cemetery this morning, Gideon, Yoni's cousin. Did we mention about Gideon?
Yeah.
Yes, that he was his cousin. And he was with him on that day on the bus. He spoke so beautifully this morning that, when we're all together like that and we can share these experiences, there are times when you're really struck emotionally. And it's a wonderful thing to have that between all of us, but not in a way that brings us down, but that gives us life.
Yeah.
And I think, and Yoni has had and continues to have such a presence in the hearts of everybody who knew him, that he still is. And actually it's something I often say when I'm speaking, that it's as if some part of him still lives, because people are still thinking about him and remembering him.
Well, we're definitely going to talk shortly about the foundation and where that came from. But that period in the hotel in Israel, do you remember much about it?
I do remember quite a lot. I remember that although we couldn't have a formal Shiva, a week of mourning, because it went right into the holiday of Sukkot, that we still were there for the week and people came every day to see us.
Yeah.
And I remember being so touched that the organ donation team from the hospital came to visit, the surgeon came to visit, the nurses who were there, and other families who'd lost children in terrorist bombings. A few of those families came. People, just so many people came, and I remember how wonderful they were in the hotel to give us a section of the lobby, not just upstairs, but I do remember they also gave us this conference room upstairs the day that Netanyahu, Bibi, came all those years ago, and he looked a lot younger.
Yep.
So they did everything they possibly could for us, and I remember all that, and being in the sukkah, and my cousins coming from London and from America as well, and I remember also we had one evening, because Yoni's, all his year of students that he had been learning with, where we haven't even spoken about that whole side of it in the yeshiva and how they all felt. they didn't know what to do with themselves, and they asked if they could all come one evening, and they all came. Were you there for that evening? You remember? That was really something special, and we all sat at the front, and they were in like an audience, maybe 50 boys, I don't remember how many, and they all asked questions or just said how they felt, and we all just exchanged our feelings. So the hotel made all that possible, and I remember all that from that time.
I think that whole period of being in Israel in the hotel, because we were sort of closed off.
Yes.
Even it was great to be there just as a family, and it was quite therapeutic because of some of the, the example you just gave.
Yeah, very.
But I think there's a few things that really stick out for me. Number one, how together you were throughout that whole period. Obviously not when the doors closed, that's a different story. But just in front of everyone. Because I might be remembering it incorrectly, but only once I remember seeing you sort of break down. And that was that sitting at the table.
Ah.
I remember you just like slumped. You were broken.
I think I felt that all the love and care around us, it did carry us through. All the people, all the talking, and the remembering Yoni, and even feeling when all the boys came from the yeshiva, it was really weird because I felt in some way we were helping them, right? It was a reverse situation. They were so devastated, and and I felt that we had something to give them. And that also gave me something back. So everything, that's, I think, is a wonderful thing about the week of Shiva, or that type of thing. Whichever way you do it, is that when people come, somebody's just recently died and you're feeling terrible, do you want to sit alone with a few people, a few members of your family, and just feel terrible and not even be speaking much? But this opened you up, because you have to open up and talk to people because they're talking to you. And it's very strengthening. I think I found that it was strengthening. Yeah, and I felt I was being carried sort of through these terrible days by these people that were allowing me to have wonderful memories and telling me lovely things about Yoni that I never knew. And just that love that was channeled towards us all. It was really very, can you say empowering even? It just felt, it just really helped tremendously.
We've obviously sat hundreds, thousands of times and just had regular conversations, and we've never been surrounded by microphones and cameras. But he wasn't even meant to be on that bus.
That's right.
That's
right. They were meant to be taking a taxi. They got in a taxi in Jerusalem. They were supposed to be going straight to the hotel, and the taxi driver was difficult he changed his mind about how much he was going to charge, and he upped the price, and the boys just decided, forget this, we're just going to go on the bus. So they got a bus to the Tachna Merkazit, the central bus station, and then they got on another bus that was going to take them directly to the hotel. So it was all, you could say just random, and just, as Gideon said on the documentary actually that was made the following year, that somehow his feet just took him to the place that this was going to happen, and his life was going to end. When you look back, you can see, pieces of the puzzle fitting together, but also it was just random. It just one of these crazy life things that you're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Because he was meant to spend another 7 or 8 months in Israel, and then he was going back to the UK to study medicine.
That's right. He had a place at university, and he was so pleased because he had received a deferment for a further year. He'd already had 1 year off, and he loved it so much being in Israel and all the studying and everything that he was doing. And he just come back in August, and this was September, so he'd just begun his second year. He was just on top of the world, very excited to be back, and looking forward to going back to study the following year, and and looking forward to the Sukkot holiday with his uncle in a hotel. What a treat. And there you go. That was it. Just not to be.
Do you remember during that period when the media turned up at the hotel, and they were just hovering in the foyer, and they were there for days, and eventually Ari had to act as if he didn't have enough things to be dealing with.
Yes.
He had to act as sort of the spokesperson.
Yes, I remember that. And I remember he had a phone call one day, and actually I remembered as if I had the phone call, but I accept it must have been him because I was really so all over the place. A phone call from a reporter and saying, and how do you feel about the fact that your son and brother's kidney has been given to a Palestinian girl? Well, we knew nothing about this. We had been asked if we were happy to donate his organs, and that was handled so beautifully by the hospital, and we had agreed, but we never in a million years thought or knew. I mean, we'd never even thought about organ donation until that day, and we didn't realise that the way that it works in Israeli hospitals, which is exactly as it should work, is that it's the person who is next on the list with the perfect match, and that is it, and it doesn't matter who they are. So it was just an astonishing moment that cut right through, right through me, right through Ari, and you're being asked to make a comment on that. And then Ari said, that's absolutely fine, that's just as it should be. It doesn't matter what religion, what race, what colour, what creed you are. This is the way it should be. And life is a life, and every life is precious. And I remember him saying it, and I think now that I'm talking about it, it sounds more likely like something he would say, so well put together on the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah, although I've often said that that's what I said. It's so funny that out of this conversation, I'm remembering things a little bit differently and remembering new things. It's very interesting. So that was an absolute shocker for us, but it was also very good to be able to say, look at this, that Palestinian has murdered my son, and here we are. We have no problem at all with his kidney being given to save the life of a Palestinian.
So you brought that up. So let's continue talking about that. Because, it was Ari.
Yeah.
I remember that.
That's so funny.
Just so you know. But again, it sort of demonstrates, even with everything going on and your emotions obviously completely out of sorts, you use that as a power of strength, because a while later you arranged to go and meet the little girl whose life Yoni helped to save.
Yes, that's right. So, a year later, we were approached by a documentary team and asked if they said they would like to make a documentary about Yoni, about his life, what happened, and about the organ donation and this amazing turnout that a Palestinian girl had received his kidney. And the funny thing is, it's very weird things in life. I had heard about this documentary team. They had recently made a very well thought of documentary about Lockerbie. And so I knew they were very good, but when the head of the documentary team walked in to meet me, I looked at him and I knew him immediately, because he had tutored as a student, like 20 years earlier. He had tutored my older sister when he was a history student. Gosh, his name's just escaped me, because it'll come to me in a minute. It was a lovely, very good-looking, lovely guy as a young student, and my older sister took a real fancy to him and passed all her exams. and so when he walked in and I knew it was him, I felt immediately at ease, because you actually, if you agree to do a documentary like that, you can't have a say on the editing.
Yeah.
So you don't really know how it's going to end up. You really have to have faith in the team, and I did. So that was really a wonderful thing for us, and we have that to this day, and we'll always have the documentary that came out of that was called A Mother's Journey, because they took me back to wherever I wanted to go. I led it, and as part of that, we went to visit the family, and they arranged it all. It wasn't easy to get there to visit the family, but it was really an unforgettable moment in my life when I walked into their home and that young mother just put her arms around me and I started to cry. And then I met Yasmin, the little girl. So she was maybe 8 or 9 at the time, and from an absolute tiny little girl who wasn't thriving, she just weighed pounds, like a baby, really. She was now quite a chubby, dark little girl who wasn't. It was a little bit like Yael, my 9-year-old little dark-haired daughter, and they just didn't know how to say thank you enough. They had the whole family there, and they had fruit and things to serve us and drinks, and it was just, I remember saying that her greatest happiness came out of my greatest sadness. It was really something that I'll never forget.
Because, you know, obviously I've seen the documentary, and as I said to you yesterday, I'm probably going to take bits of it and include it in this, just because I don't know if anybody's seen it. But It is a really powerful moment when you're standing there, and there was a moment where the camera is on you and you just sort of felt helpless. It might be just because I know you. Other people may not pick up on that, but it just felt that you were, I can't believe I'm in this position, in this here, dealing with this.
It was unreal. Here's a Palestinian family, and our son, a little bit of our son lives on in their daughter, and did save her life. And I just hoped that the feeling in that room on that day and at that time, I hope and I'm sure that they will forever be grateful that that's the way it was, grateful to the Israeli authorities. And, you know, I really felt that that was some ray of light that could shine through the years and maybe on to the next generation. And that little girl who, the next time I went back actually, she was 18, and she was really, I'm sure she's married and well settled now, you know, but it's just wonderful to think that we could do that and that it might make a difference.
And the reality is, though, that Yoni's organs helped to save other lives. But
Yes.
but you never heard about that.
No.
You know, so it's, whilst I understand it's the media just going for the clicks and the attention and it's a story, he did help to save, I think it was 4 people, maybe more. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah,
You might know.
It was 3 other people, and I can't remember exactly which organs went to who. That this was, the bus bombing had been on a Thursday, this was a Friday, and we wanted to bury Yoni before Shabbat, because we felt that was the right thing to do and that's what he would have wanted. So we didn't donate his heart, because that would have taken too long and we would then not have had the funeral till Sunday. But other than that, all his other organs were donated, and it was really quite an amazing outcome for a family who had never in their life ever thought about organ donation, to suddenly realise and understand just what a wonderful thing it is to be able to save lives. And it's a good feeling for us, because you feel that the person does live on in all these people whose hope of living was fading.
Yep.
It's really quite a wonderful thing.
No, I agree. But I also, during that period when we were in the hotel, even then when, you know, all this noise is going on and so much, everyone's dealing with so much, I think it was you. Can't remember this bit, but it might have been.
I'm sure if it was something good, it was me.
So then it was you. The idea of starting a foundation in Yoni's name, even then it was brought up.
Yes, we were going through Yoni's rucksack, which had been taken to the police and then brought to the hotel. And we were all actually in one of the rooms together. And I found this list of, at that time there was 50 or so aphorisms, sayings and thoughts about life that Yoni had written. We later found another lot that were folded up in a tiny little piece of paper in his wallet. Eventually there was 66 altogether. And when I found these and discussing it with the family, we all felt, and I don't remember who exactly or whose idea it was, I think we all felt together, we can't just stop, have nothing happen. We have to use these, and we have to use Yoni's life to inspire people, because he was such a busy, loving, fun-loving but focused person who had hardly a day in his life when he didn't help somebody on some level. That was just the way he was, but full of fun and tremendous energy. And we felt, and I think Gideon must have been part of that as well, in the hotel together and thinking, what can we do? We must do something to perpetuate Yoni's memory. And so we came up with the idea that we would make something called the Yoni Jesner Foundation, and we would start with these aphorisms, and then and over the next year I went to visit a few schools and educational people, and we began the foundation. Ari was very instrumental in that, especially at the beginning. especially. And yeah, that's when it was really at that time that we really felt that we can't let Yoni's energy just leave the world. And this was one way that we could channel and something good that would come out of it. And we didn't know if it would be mainly organ donation or if it would be education. In the end, it's mainly education. And over the years, he's now inspired thousands and thousands of young people who get started on their volunteering journey and then continue because they find something they love. And that's what the Yoni Jesner Foundation's all about today.
So before we really dive into the foundation, because I do want to, I think it's important, and I know that it does amazing work. That whole period in Israel, like at one point we went and visited Yoni's room in the yeshiva.
Oh, yes, that's right.
We all got a bus and off we went. If you remember, well, I know you do remember because we chatted about it yesterday a little bit. It was such a surreal experience because when you walked into his room, his things were just lying around as you would expect with an 18, 19-year-old boy. Yeah. You know, some clothes were on the bed and there was I remember some things on the desk and there were just things scattered around.
Yeah.
And we were all just walking around, looking at his things.
Yeah, just feeling his life. And it was unbelievable to think that just a short time ago this is where he was and where he was living, and we wanted to be close. I think it helped us be closer to him to just look at all these things and be able to hold them and look at his clothes, which were all folded in plastic bags, and like my mother, his grandma, used to have everything folded so perfectly in the cupboard there, and we had a laugh about that actually. Look at how perfectly everything was folded and how organised he was.
And I remember he had like a pin board or something on the wall and there was pictures and we all stood just looking at the different pictures that were there.
That's right. And these were very important things to do. It was like we were on a journey, I guess, that week, you know, to really experience and be close to Yoni and who he was and how he lived. And we went back to when we were back at the yeshiva, we also went into a sukkah. Somebody had us in the sukkah all together and we spoke, and they spoke about Yoni, and all these things were very healing for us.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
I'm sure not a day goes by where you don't think about back then, but that sort of 7 to 10 days when we were in the hotel and in Israel, I think the word healing is a great one. Because I think it was the fact we were all together, the fact we had the opportunity to go and see where Yoni was living and studying, to hear from friends that maybe none of us had ever met before, and just their experience of being with Yoni, like it was. And it also gave all of us an opportunity, because I think on the post that I created last week, and I sent it to you so you could see it, I made reference to the fact that Yoni being killed somewhat acted as a catalyst for so many changes in our lives.
Yes.
You know, Ari changed career. 2 months later, I'd moved here, even though I was always going to. It was just a question of when.
And because you moved here,
then Darren moved, and Heidi eventually.
Heidi was coming anyway, I think. Yeah. But still, you would think, and I've been asked this quite a number of times, that you would think that if your son has, or your brother or your stepbrother has been killed in Israel, it's like the last place you would want to go. Isn't it weird? And you think about it, that we all just, I mean, I would have loved to have just come back. I just wanted to be part of Israel and part of this world of Israel and all that it can offer. It's so weird that was the catalyst to really get you to come, and then you met Yael, your wife, and then your brother met her close friend, and then all the things that happened, and my daughter, Gabby, who had come from New York, they just didn't go back because they'd been thinking about coming, so they just stayed. And everybody somehow, it's as if, I mean, it wasn't the case that Yoni was not the heart of the family. He was just part of the family. Yeah. But somehow the fact that he was buried here, that this had happened here, it was like a magnet that really made us all feel Israel's more meaningful. And maybe the fact that we had given up one of our own or lost one of our own, I've never thought about that till now, it made the contact, the connection with Israel stronger. It's like when you give up for your baby, that you're looking after your child as they grow, the more you give to a baby as they grow, the more your connection is. And when children are removed from the parents, it's hard to have that emotional connection. And so this was what had happened to us, and it made a very strong emotional connection for all of us.
I think you're right on that. I think, and I'll talk only about me, the other factor for me, I remember sitting in Heidi's that night waiting to go to the airport, watching the news, sitting there watching BBC, and well, that's not true, and that's not true.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really? So you
Saying
knew
to
even
myself,
then?
well, I don't want to live in a place where, you know, the media outlets are
Yeah.
not being honest.
And it's only when you're really involved in something
That
and
you
you know,
Yeah.
as has happened recently with the war in Israel, that it's
Yeah.
just hitting you every day of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But you saw even then.
Even then, yeah. Because when you know the truth and you know what's being said and you listen to what's being said, you think, well, what's going on here?
That's amazing to hear that today.
Yeah. Before we get into the foundation, when you look back at that time in Israel, it's just a mishmash. It's just such an emotional roller coaster.
It was very special and very precious. And I don't think of it as being a terrible time. Even at the funeral, which was so difficult, and there was hundreds and hundreds of people there, that the person who actually laid Yoni physically to rest in his grave turned out to be a friend of ours from the old city who knew Yoni when he was a little boy.
Wow.
And our children used to play together. And there was so many special moments sort of sent to kind of soothe us and help us through these awful times. You know, I mean, although there was, so many times when I just wanted to lie down on the floor and pretend I was in beside Yoni in the grave. That's just where I wanted to be. And yet, because of the family around, it's so important to be there for them. And also, I'd lost my father a couple of years earlier, and my mother was never the same after. And I really made a conscious decision that was not going to happen to us, and that I wouldn't want the kids to feel that I wasn't the same person, and that they had lost more than just Yoni. They'd lost enough. And I was determined about that, and that was good for me as well,
Yeah.
for everybody. So it was a very special week. It sounds so
No, but I know,
really
I know what you mean.
crazy to say that, but we got a lot out of it. We were very strengthened.
Do you also think it helped that you were living in a small community in Glasgow, because the whole community were there to catch you?
Exactly. I thought that, so we came back to Glasgow, and when we came back to Glasgow, they had a memorial service for Yoni. There was about 1,000 people there, and after the service, each one came by to speak to us, and they signed a book. And we also went to London because because so many of us are from London, and my sister had an evening and a day in her home when people could come. And I remember feeling that it's as if we were being carried on a bed of cotton wool through all this. I really remember being in somebody's car in London at that time, saying we've really been carried on this gentle, soft air by all the people around. And instead of me having to go through, and all of us having to go through, seeing people a bit here and a bit there, meeting somebody at the shops or somebody, and it going on and on and on, just about everybody had seen us and spoken to us. And so I was able to just sort of integrate back into our small Jewish community, and everybody knew that, and I knew that they knew, and they'd spoken to me, nearly everybody. But I didn't go back to work for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And I used to really play these lovely Tehillim that Yoni had by some singer that was so emotional. I used to play that all the time, and I would go to various shopping centres, and I would just walk around and look at all the stuff and think about Yoni. And sometimes I'd buy things, and then I'd go and take them back. And I had this weird, that's just what I did. It was, but that's what I needed at that time, just integrating and living, each day with this and learning to live with it. I guess
Yeah.
that's how I learned to live with it.
Yeah.
And then one day I felt it would be good for me to go back to work. And I did, and everybody was fine. I wasn't nervous about going back because people were great.
And they knew the story, they knew you.
Yes, yeah.
Because I remember because I didn't come up to Glasgow for the event when you went back to Glasgow. But I remember speaking to you and Dad after, and you said, because Yoni went to the same high school that I went to, albeit I'd left already. And you were saying, this teacher was there, that teacher was there, and this one. I remember thinking, he wouldn't be coming if it was me. He must have been a good student.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was just an amazing time, really. When I said it before, I have to say it again, when there was this great force of love and care that came towards all of us from the community, people out with the community. And I wrote a few things about it, and that was very good for me to kind of crystallise my thoughts about it, because when you're crystallising your thoughts, your emotions are coming up again. So that was all really good. And at that time, Elle was so young.
Yep.
She was just 9.
Yep.
And there was people out of the blue, this organisation in Germany that were very kind to people who have suffered through who've lost somebody through a terrorist act, sent her a beautiful teddy and a hand-sewn quilt that she had on her bed for years. And that teddy was there for years as well. And, I wrote her a book about Yoni because she didn't talk much,
Yep.
but she was listening to everything, and she was living this all through everything else that was happening, which was very good for her as well. And maybe that's why as times go by, we can laugh a little and find the humour in it, because we've been down there all together in those depths and we've come up,
Well, I also think, to some extent, at your core, you are an educator. Like, you love teaching kids. You've always been, not always, but you've been a teacher. So shouldn't it be a surprise that you decided to create a foundation to do good and to give back and turn something so tragic into something positive and meaningful that other people can benefit from?
Yes, yeah.
So whether it's your own children or, the kids in the classroom or kids that are benefiting from the foundation, probably all comes from the same place, that at your core you believe in passing on and creating good.
Absolutely. Of course, you're so right. I hadn't really thought about it in those terms before, but that is what pushed me to create the Yoni Jesner Awards. So I felt that if children could imagine if lots of young people could be doing volunteering, so they're doing mitzvot, they're doing chesed, like all these good deeds like Yoni can't do anymore, and that would be because of how he lived his life, he would be the inspiration. And because he was only 19, and he would always be only 19, he would always be a few steps ahead of school children, to look at him and his example and read his aphorisms, his thoughts about living, and that seemed to me to be a great way to perpetuate his memory. And, it was slow to start, but it's been going for years, and we're even now developing new parts of the Yoni Jesner Awards, and it started with a Yoni Jesner 20, because we thought that between the end of the Chagim and Pesach, there's 20 weeks when the kids can give an hour, but so many of them did more than 20, so it became 50, and then so many did more than 50, it became 100. So we've got these 3. You can get your Yoni Jesner 20 or your Yoni 50 or your Yoni 100. And it's so funny when they say, I've got my Yoni Jesner. Did you get yours? What did you get? What did you do for your Yoni Jesner? And then at the end of the year, we have this big awards ceremony, and they come up with their school, and we show a video of what they've done and all the rest of it. And it's just, you just feel that Yoni would be so thrilled about all that. And there's a tremendous energy in the room.
Yep.
And it is all about educating, and I'm still doing it, and I'm still, after I present every year, do what I call, in inverted commas, the motivational talk and tell them about Yoni's life, etc. I'm still being asked questions sometimes that I've never been asked before, and it makes me stop and think, and sometimes take a deep breath, because I, could really have have a good weep when I think about whatever it is. And it's a lovely thing. It's lovely for kids to come up afterwards and to tell me how much they enjoyed it and what it meant to them. But even better when I go back into the schools and they tell me what they've been doing or what they've done. And it really changes people's lives. And that's what Yoni was all about. And that's what this is. So it's been very empowering.
You might not know the answer to this, but do you know how many kids have gone through the foundation?
No.
No, neither do I.
No,
it'd be,
that many.
I'll you know what? I'll find out and I'll add it.
Okay.
Because I think it's
You'd have to
it's
look
important
back all the years. That's a good question.
because it will be thousands of kids,
Yes.
which is amazing.
And it does. If you start when you're young, and this is quite a young age, it's like pre-bar mitzvah, age 11, 12. And then in the UK, they go. Many of them can choose to do their Duke of Edinburgh Award, which is another project you do when you're maybe 13, 14. And the ones who've done their Yoni Jesner before that have got their volunteering sorted, and they're quite hooked on the volunteering. And that's a whole section of the Duke of Edinburgh Award that they don't need to think twice about.
Yeah.
So they're a step ahead of everybody else. And also now we're associated with this major organisation called GIFT, who run programmes, and also through university, and they've fed back to me that I didn't know. So many young people who are students at university who are still doing...
Ah, really?
Yeah, which I never
Wow.
knew anything about, and they started with their Yoni Jesner Award.
So, well, that's what I was going to ask you. Like, when you sit here now, obviously the foundation's been going for
About 20
years.
So, yeah.
What, like, where do you want it to go? What's your vision for it? Is it continuing the same path, or have you still got big ideas that you want to develop it?
Well, I love where it is just now, because I think that to start small and start young, because when they're 11, 12, 13, you can open their minds, and they're just beginning. And if this is just, and their parents are involved because they're not driving yet, they're not so independent, and it becomes something that's discussed at home, it's a lovely way to start. And what we're actually doing now is we're developing the programme so we go into school more. And now that we're partnering with GIFT, which is a big charitable organisation, but they are a lot about lifelong giving. And so they've developed educational programmes for the kids. So they go in and they'll have a few lessons about it. And I go back and the children can interview me. And we're putting meat on the bones of the award. So it's not just about doing your volunteering and getting your hours and your certificate, which is great. And for your future CV, it's very nice. But it's really about working on their inner selves and how they are growing up. And that's what I'm so happy to see that we're developing now. And that's brilliant. The one thing that I always feel we haven't done enough of is the organ donation thing. But there's just, life goes on and the years pass, and from time to time, I get involved in that, and it's so important. But I think, exactly as you said, because I'm in education and I love being in school and I'm still teaching myself, so it's my natural habitat.
Yep.
And that's what I love to see. So I would like it to keep doing what it's doing, but better and more. That's really how I see it going.
You mean we could sit here all day and talk,
I know.
but I know time is of the essence because you're going up north. I used to do some work with somebody who's the aunt of a Gamberger. A Gamberger was one of the hostages.
Oh, yes.
The day she was released, the driver of the suicide bomber was released as part of the deal. And I remember speaking to Ari that day, and I spoke to Sarit, who's the aunt of Agam, that day as well. And I said, how the connection that's incredible.
Yes.
And I remember in the conversation with Ari, he was saying, that's amazing. Amazing that the hostages are finally coming out. We hardly even talked about him. Like, do you ever think about that?
Not often, but I don't want to be held by all this stuff and be defined by what Hamas has done and these terrorists who are just terrible people. And so it just doesn't come into my mind very often. At that time, it was just unbelievable that had happened all at the same time. And it's crazy that Israel has to do this and has to release these people back out back onto the streets and they're going to do this again. Hopefully not, but they will probably. And it brings up the tremendous unfairness of it all. And I despair at that time. I despair, it's a desperate feeling of, when will it be enough and when will this ever stop? And I felt that all through the war, with every beautiful young life that's been taken from this war. And it's like, I think, I know what they're going to go through, and I know what that poor family is going to, for the rest of their lives. They've lost this person, and there's so many. And it's just, but look, with all of us, when you think of the numbers, it becomes like a football score sort of thing. But if you just think about and imagine, even if you've never had it happen to you, you just have to imagine, God forbid it was somebody you love, and then you can get the feeling of the enormity of this, of what's gone on.
Yeah.
But it's terrible. But I think it's in my nature. I don't make a great effort to lift myself out of that, because I feel you have to be positive about life, and that as much, even you could say, bringing more good into the world, the more bad that there is, to balance it all up. And this is who we are, and this is who Jewish people are, but most other people, so many people in the UK as well, just your ordinary good person, they just want to do good things. They've got no bad feelings for anybody. And this is how we should be living our lives. And, you can't be defined. I think it's a terrible thing if you're defined by what you've lost and by the tragedy and the negativity, because life is there to be lived, and I know that that's what Yoni would want.
I think that is a great place to stop. I think the last thing you said is 100% true. I'm sure if he's looking down, he'd be very proud of the work that you've done. You, Ari, Jared, everybody involved in the foundation, and everything that you've done over the last 23 years. I'm sure he'd be very proud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's really been lovely.
It's been great. Thank you for taking the time. And
pleasure.
We will talk more off when the cameras are switched off.
Okay.
But thank you, Marsha.
Thanks.